St. Paul's is located at the corner of Broadway and Fulton. It was 50 feet from Tower 7, which was the Borders bookstore, and right in the Ground Zero complex. It's just right at the heart of that. And I came up out of the subway tunnel and the heavens were raining debris and court records and dollar bills and women's clothes. And we had no idea what was going on. I ran back to the office building where we have a day school and tried to help evacuate 80 children who had just come to school that morning. And it was a cold morning. We wrapped them all up in our coats, and at a signal we began running down Greenwich Street toward the Staten Island Ferry. Again, we heard this horrible noise, turned around, and the North Tower had collapsed. We watched it collapse, and this enormous dust cloud just overtook us, threw us to the ground because of the impact, the speed of the wind, and I thought everyone had died. I mean, no one was making any noises. Then I heard some of these children crying and some of the day school teachers saying, "Help, help." And we somehow or other rallied around each other, were able to get up, brush ourselves off, and begin running again to the Staten Island Ferry. We heard that St. Paul's had been destroyed. Reports said that every single building around here had all the windows knocked out. Some of the buildings were wrecked. The Millennium Hotel looked to be destroyed. Century 21 looked to be destroyed. And someone sneaked under the police cordon, used his cell phone, and called us and said, "St. Paul's not only is still standing, it looks like it's completely okay."
At the very beginning, food was just served outside the very front, because we didn't let people in at the first few days. Were tables where we had pitched tents, because a couple days into the relief effort, it poured rain. And under the tents were hard hats and gas masks and containers of Vicks, Vapo Rub, and heavy gloves and boots and things that people would need to be outside on the site. And within a couple weeks, the supplies had moved inside, and we'd set up beds within the pews. We were just trying to meet the needs of all of the people who had come to volunteer as rescue workers.
So the first table was tissues, chapstick, the sort of small things, that you might want to carry in your pocket, or you might need, headache pills, that sort of thing. So then the second was clothing, and a few people would be there, and then you'd get to drinks. There would be a coffee table, and then you turn the corner, there was a candy table, and then there was a long food table, which was permanently serving food all day long. And there were volunteers at each of these tables. And then you came up this side, as you're entering the right side of the church, and that was all the massage, chiropractic, podiatry. All of those people would, tend to your physical well-being.
We had 3 meals a day. We had 25 volunteers a day. We had podiatrists, chiropractors, doctors, nurses, pastoral counselors, psychiatrists, grief counselors. They were all over the building just doing volunteer service, helping these people out who had given truly their souls to help out with the rescue effort across the street.
We saw 14,000 people, a little bit over 14,000 people over the course of 9 months. After a few weeks, the cards and letters started to go up, so the place started to get, warmer and warmer and more friendlier, and then overwhelming, and then, sort of super overwhelming, and then it transformed into a whole other space altogether. And the whole time it was always a house of worship, because we started to have noon service, so it was always a sanctuary in that way. It's just that the outlying things changed.
The chaotic hotel of radical hospitality, which it truly was. You'd walk in, it was this extraordinary place to look at. You were sort of shocked by the outpouring from all over the world. And there was music too. There was always music. There were musicians who came and played all the time. They'd play the piano, or they'd bring their instruments, or they'd sing, and it was, there was this constant ambiance of sound. One of the things that she did was she wouldn't let the press in, and the press described it as the velvet rope that they couldn't get past. The workers would come in, but they would find themselves in a private sanctuary, essentially, where they would get the love that they need. The workers on the site would be doing stuff that it's hard for us to imagine, you know, that they would be picking up pieces of people, something which they're not accustomed to, not even trained to do. And then they would come in here where our job was to connect them to the loving side of life. It is the most potent spiritual experience I've ever had. It gives one a tremendous sense of hope, because in this terrifically, you know, awful event, there arose inside this chapel this great love and great support, and it was universal. It's hard to describe, but in responding to us, we mutually nurtured each other, and it was an extraordinary experience.
And then they would leave here with a spirit, I think, of hope, because they saw this was just a shining example of the best kind of service you can imagine. People helping out one another at a time of great crisis, praying with each other, sitting down, hugging each other. It was a vision of what humanity can be about. We often say that mission was hurled at us. Suddenly we were given this assignment, and just happened to be a place that had the personnel and the resources to respond and to do it immediately. When the mayor of New York City declared that the rescue effort had ended and that the recovery effort had begun, that was mid-June of 2002, we closed the chapel, we repainted it, we cleaned it up, and we saved all of the paraphernalia that had been part of the recovery effort. The banners that had come in, the letters from all over the world, the signs of encouragement. We had something like 10,000 banners sent to us by children and people from across the world. And so we saved all of that and reconfigured the chapel, got it ready to open, and opened it up in the summer of 2002 as a memorial to the great work. And it became just a very exciting living museum as a tribute to what happened at Ground Zero on 9/11. This is 2005. We have between 25 and 30,000 people a week who come in, who pay their respects to the dead, many of them who come in and grieve, and you'll notice there are Kleenex boxes all over the place. That grief has not stopped. The unwavering spirit here is extravagant hospitality. That's the spirit that happened spontaneously after 9/11. It's the spirit that's carried us through the last 4 years. We define that kind of hospitality as creating a warm and open space. The stranger comes in and sits down and relaxes and begins to unravel his or her gifts, such things as courage and hope and strength and forgiveness and reconciliation.
The real story of what happened here happens over 9 months. It's 14,000 people. It's what the chapel looked like at, toward the end of the recovery. It's people coming week after week. It's a massage therapist who worked 6 nights a week for 9 months. That's really, it's the community that was created here.
That momentum is still alive, and the life that was in this place, and we want it to spread. And we call it by a name these days. It's the reconciling love of God. Whenever there are warring factions in the world, to bring them together, to do service, and to have an alternative from fighting violence with violence. We want to do another alternative here, and it has to do with reconciliation, forgiveness, and peace.